Welcome to another edition of the Syncom Smalltalk tutorial series. This morning we're going to go a little deeper into the ObjectStudio Designer, the GUI tool that is, and we're going to go through some things about laying out widgets and aligning widgets and building menus. So to get started, let's get this out of the way. And we've created a small interface here that has a tabular list box. So if I double click on this to see what it is a tabular list box, which I got down here. So one of these options down here, it's hard to guess them sometimes, but this one is the tabular list box. That's what this is. So that's what I've got on here. We've also got a menu that we've defined with a couple of options on it. And what I wanted to do first is go through something very basic. So let's drop two buttons on here, not for the purpose of having them have any real behavior, but to go through a couple of things on alignment. So you notice I've got this one up here and this one down here. So let's select this one first and this one second. And what we're going to do on the alignment is you'll notice that most bottom justified is one option and bottom justified. If I pick this one, it's going to align them based on the last one of the things I picked. Whereas if I do this and then select these two, and I've used the control key to select these by the way, I come over here and most bottom will pick the one at the bottom as the one to align. And the right and center justifications will work exactly the same way. So you'll see justify right, justify left, most right. They work the same way as these two. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, if I double click on this, last time we went through, I pointed out that you can hook up an existing method as the assigned method for the button. There's another way to do this though that's interesting in the ObjectStudio Designer. If I have this guy over here and I want to go to the controller and events, notice that I have things all through here. So I have button 1, button 2. I can take button 1 and say on clicked, I want to have the method implemented in the person app, which is going to be the controller. And then if I hit the method button, it's going to give me a method template, and I can write it right here, and if I hit save, it will actually save this. And let's just leave it blank and see what happens. So you notice down here, if I go to this guy once I save this guy, so I'll go out OK, and now I will close this down and say yes, I want to save the changes in the package. So it'll go ahead and let's go to the person app controller, and you notice that in here, and I had to unclick and re-click to get this, notice button 1 clicked, which doesn't have any behavior, but it generated it for me. So that method got defined that way. You can do that way in ObjectStudio in addition to the way we went through last time. Let's go back to the editor though. With that out of the way, let's go back to this menu. So you see I've got a menu with two items on it. Now, the interesting thing about this is under the tools, that's where you're going to define a menu. Now, let's just look at how we did this. Notice the ampersand. You can also use the tilde key to define hotkeys. So you've got the shortcuts like Alt F, Alt O, what have you. So I've defined those. Notice how this one has a little caret in front of it. That means that I have used this button to push it as a submenu of file. The dash, if I put that in, that's how I got the separator. And then finally here I have E ampersand, so the X is where I'm going to have my Alt key. And notice I've got the values behind these. That's going to be important in a moment. The interesting thing about this is that if you're used to the way menu editors work in VisualWorks, this is a little different. So you notice that I can't hook up a method directly to open or to exit like this. What I can do though is I can get a method hookup, and I've already done this, file menu, so I pushed one over here from here to there. And I can also, of course, do that over here. Notice on controller events, I could pick the file option here and do the same thing. So I could have written a method this way. So I could have gone through that mechanism as well. Once I've got that, let's close this out and we'll take a look at what we've got here in the method. So you've got the file menu method, and you see that what I've got is a menu which I'm pulling up based on that ID that I gave the menu file. I get the value to get the current selection value that's been picked, so whether it's open or exit. And then if it's open, I'm going to do this. If it's exit, I'm going to do that. And now I can double click on this to open this guy up. Now I'm going to file open, and notice it popped up the inspector for me. And if I hit exit, it's going to exit out. So that's how you hook up menus in ObjectStudio. Now the next thing that you might notice is that that tabular widget, I've got this thing laid out where I've got a column here and a column there. The last thing I wanted to go through in this tutorial is how you structure that kind of thing for this widget. So if you take a look here, so let's edit this, and you see that I didn't really do a whole lot in the definition here. Notice there's this Datalink option. if you have a domain model set up already using the modeling and mapping tool, you can hook things up through here automatically. You can structure a SQL select or a table definition, and this is for the internal ObjectStudio database. Useful for demos, not for so much else. So you can hook things up automatically in here. If that doesn't work for you, if you're getting your data some other way, maybe through web services, maybe through some other mechanism where it's coming into your domain model and you don't have the easy ability to hook it up that way, you can still do it pretty straightforwardly. So let's go ahead here, and I've got my open initialization method, which is going to be called for me when my interface is being opened. There's another one called post open initialization, which will be called after the interface is open. So I could do those two. This is before it's opened, the other one is after. So here I called super, then I have init table layout and display people. Now for people, I've got this person class that has an ID and a name. And on the class side, I've got an example method that just fills in some stub data. So it's not doing anything terribly exciting. Let's go over here to the instance side again. We'll go back into open initialization. And to init table layout, let's take a look at that. This is where I set up my layout. So I'm giving it a name here so that I could grab it later if I wanted to. And I'm going to add the ID, starting here, ending there. So that's how many actual character positions it's going to be Y. And I could give it options. So I could give it things like italic and bolding and various other things. I can do the same thing for the name. And then I add that layout by doing this set layout. And then finally I have to give it labels so that it knows what labels to put along the top. So I set up an identity dictionary with that symbol and that string, that symbol, that string, and then put the labels. And then once that's there, that's how this all comes in. So let's close this guy down. And having done that, let's go ahead and take a look at how the data got in. We already looked at in here in Person App Controller how we went ahead and initialized the layout and how we initialized the people here. So this is where the people came from, and we set this guy up here to display. So we have our people, we have our array that we're going to set up. And notice, since this is ObjectStudio, arrays are growable. You don't have to use an ordered collection. So I have a dictionary that I'm going to set up with ID, put the ID, name, put the name. So you have to toss in strings here for each one of these things into this dictionary. And then you take your tabular view, put values, and you put that array of dictionaries so you can think of each line in the array. So I think here I have each line in the array gets that dictionary of ID and name coming in, and that's where all of that stuff gets set up. So again, move this out of the way. That's where all this stuff gets set up. So that's kind of a brief overview of some of the highlights of the ObjectStudio Designer. There's a lot more going on in this. You notice that if I edit this and then I go to form item, new item, there are an awful lot more widgets in here. There are an awful lot more options up here on the menus to go through. But that's kind of a brief overview of some of the highlights of things you'll need to use all the time. So that's about it for today. Until next time, have fun with Sitcom Small Talk.